Should we start it? Yes. I'd like to call to order meeting of April 11th, 2011 workshop. I just want to introduce one of the council members. This is Councilwoman Loretano. If none of you recognize her, I just didn't want them to think that we put someone in your place anytime. And as I look around the table, it looks like we're all in attendance. So tonight we only have one thing on the agenda, and so I'll turn that over to our city manager, John Fishback, and to Terry Canada. Excuse me, may I remind you all tonight, sorry for interrupting, John, please speak into the microphone. We're finding out, really, people do not hear you. It's not the recording, so if you have to pull your microphone up a little bit closer, tip it a little bit, but let's make sure the public hears the good and the bad.
Thank you. Certainly, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, before I start tonight, I'd just like to introduce Bill Cousin, if he could stand for a moment. Bill has 2 new stars on his collar as the interim chief of police. Bill has been with us for 16 years, and he was appointed the interim police chief on March 30th. So, Bill, welcome.
I think we should have applause.
Thank you. Tonight, we have under the April column, this is the budget calendar. We're tonight going to be talking a balanced budget proposal with you, high level of recap of revenues and expenditures, a review of new considerations in the budget, a review of tax policies, a review of CIP projects, and council direction staff follow-up for various budget matters. Then on April 25th, we will have an additional follow-up for the council from the balanced budget proposal work session tonight, and follow up on the council direction that we've received at that time. Then on May 16th, we've reserved it for following up from, again, the balanced budget proposal and continuing discussions and from this proposed workshop tonight, from this actual workshop tonight. And then on the May 23rd, we will have a tentative budget for your consideration for adoption, and we will include review of any modifications based on council feedback that we've received. And then on June 20th, we will have a work session reserved for following up on any tentative budget discussions that you may have brought up that we're still working on. And on June 27th, we will have the final budget adoption. Tonight's presentation is going to consist of a whole variety of things. Number one, we're going to review the update of current economic conditions. We're going to review the fiscal year 12 general fund, both a 5-year forecast, fiscal year 12 balanced operating budget, revenues and expenditures. Then we're going to review additional costs, one-time budget considerations, capital improvement plan, out years and unfunded requests or projects, and then have City Council policy discussion on rainy day fund, fully funding maintenance reserves, additional budget considerations which are unfunded, and compensation and benefits. Several directors and managers will also be presenting this evening. We'll hear from Jeannie Ruddy, our Human Resources Manager, who will be providing an update on employee compensation and benefits. We will be hearing from Terry Canada, whom I will turn it over to in a moment, on the total budget for fiscal year 12. Dean Kogenhauer, we hope we'll get back in time. He's been downtown Phoenix at a hearing all day, and he will cover the city's insurance program for fiscal year 12. Paul Louisi, acting fire chief, will present the service option that we're looking at for the fire and EMS in the mobile community, and explain to you what we're working on right now as an alternative to that. And Chris Nadeau, telecommunications manager, will provide you an update on the radio tower project. And Mike Svet, Parks and Recreation Director, will cover additional right-of-way maintenance that you raised during the November work session. We will conclude that council policy discussion on the rainy day fund, and if there is an interest in adjusting the level of 4 months operating current, which is your current council guideline, And I'll warn you in advance, we have not adjusted it at all in order to balance this budget. As well as an opportunity to discuss the additional budget considerations and possibilities for using the rainy day fund. The fiscal year budget that you'll see this evening is balanced. It's very fiscally conservative. General fund operating budget is structurally sound and balanced without the use of reserves or the rainy day fund. Increase in state shared revenues as a result of the 2010 census reallocation. General fund revenue projections show the first sign of increase in 3 years. They're up 7%. And we maintain current service levels. As I mentioned, there is no deficit to address this year. And I was asked to provide a brief definition of structural deficit because we have, as you'll see, eliminated the structural deficit. The structural deficit is very simply ongoing operating revenues do not equal ongoing expenses. We are proposing a budget this evening where the ongoing operating revenues equal the ongoing expenditures, which include the ballpark and the debt for the ballpark. So we're very pleased and proud of this budget that we're presenting to you this evening. The increase in state shared revenue is a significant item, and that's $3.1 million to the general fund. And there's also approximately a $591,000 addition to the highway user fund. That's the net gain after the state took some of the money. But
I'm sorry, John, can you go back? So you said after the state has taken some of the money?
Yes.
That's including what this budget may include from the state?
Yes, the state took roughly 400,000, and we have a net gain of 591. So we had a net gain of roughly $1 million. Is that right?
So we don't need to worry going forward in this next year that they may still try to take something from
Not
the
during
cities?
this next year, but no. So this is the budget that the governor signed the other day. So we have that totally built in here.
John, just real quick, construction sales tax is not considered operating revenue, correct?
No, it is not. It's $3 million is projected. We incorporate all of the city council directives that we've received to date. That includes a reduction in the food tax for home consumption. That's changing the tax rate from 2.5 to 2.25 on food for in-home consumption. And it costs about $375,000. That's also incorporated into the balanced budget. And all of the utility funds, we finally got there. This is the first year. When I first got here 3 years ago this week, I was shocked to find that our utility funds weren't self-sufficient, and the council made clear that you all wanted them self-sufficient. So we finally got there this year. They are totally self-sufficient. Departments generally are held to last year's base budget. The one exception is human resources. We are, and we'll talk about this later, we are moving Sandra back down to the training position that she's held previously, and that's a critical position for the city. We seem to see in our insurance activity things creeping up because of the lack of training that we've had for the past 3 years. And so Sandra will be going back to her training activities. We will be replacing, not Sandra, but we will be replacing Mary Fightmaster, and that person will be assigned to work with Mayor Lord on her scheduling and things like that and going to meetings. And so that is all budgeted, so there is no impact to the budget. Is that on? Try the switch on the side.
Hit the top of it like it. No, doesn't sound like hers.
There.
There it goes.
Use this one.
No, I don't think hers is on. Try that one.
I just had a question about the property taxes, because last year we kind of gave a break to the property taxes. Does the new budget, is it back at the higher rate now for this year? Is that what we're using to figure it out?
Yes, we're assuming that it will be back to the figure. That's not really part of the budget, is it?
No, not the operating.
No.
Okay, so that was
But it will be back to the $1.60, and in fact, we may have to subsidize it a little bit. We'll get into that later, but we may have to subsidize it a little bit because the taxes won't be quite enough to cover from $1.60.
Okay, thank you.
Let me ask the question a different way, John. Is our levy going up?
In general fund, we'll max it out.
Can
No,
you
ma'am.
speak in the microphone,
In
please?
general fund?
No, is the total levy going up, both primary and secondary?
Larry, come up, please.
Why don't you all push those microphones a little bit closer to you? Thank you.
The total levy will be going up for, one, the increase in the primary, and then the second would be, no, I think that would be it. I'm going on memory. I don't think we have the specific numbers with here tonight, but it's to get back to the $1.60 rate, and I believe it works almost even, but I think slightly up because of the primary.
Okay, I'd just be curious on the overall levy, because as I recall a prior presentation, I thought it was pretty flat, if I'm not mistaken, when you added the primary and the secondary levy. But, and again, I'm going from recollection, so.
It's very close. I just don't want to say that it's going down and
Okay.
be wrong. If it changed, it's in the couple 100,000 range on the total
And
levy
you're saying from the last time the levy was set, is that what you're saying?
Well, no,
from last year.
From the
from
last
from
year?
last year.
Okay, just want to clarify.
yeah, if you can, I'd be curious where the levy is in comparison.
We can get that
Okay.
sent out.
And that will be in a future meeting.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
And also, we have balanced operating budget incorporates key additional costs, again, within the balanced budget, within the current operating expenditures, within the current operating revenues. And then we're guided by the financial policies of the council, all of them. And we assume the rainy day fund reserve at four months, which is the current council policy. And we will discuss that at the end of this session. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Terry, who will review the fiscal year 12 general fund operating budget for us. Terry?
So just as a reminder, again, we are focusing in tonight on the general fund and the operating portion of it. We will talk about the capital plan later in the presentation. So moving ahead, I just wanted to bring this information again back to you. We've been keeping up on this over the months as far as indicators for the national economy as well as the state and local economy. Recent, I think it's from February, unemployment rate for the nation is still up at 8.8. Statewide, it remained unchanged for the last month through February, and Goodyear dropped, I think, a couple tenths of a percent. It's down to 6.3. If you do notice here, we still do lag a little bit behind the local national activity as far as economic conditions go. With this in mind, it's kind of how we put the budget together. So as you can see on the heading, it's not good, but it's getting better. Like John was saying, this is the first time in a number of years we've actually seen an increase in revenue as a total. So putting together the 5-year forecast, the assumptions are pretty close, if not the same as what we used in the dashboard modeling for sales tax that we had demonstrated a couple months ago. You can see the first year we're kind of out of the red. We are expecting a surplus, and Joe, that's basically coming from the one-time construction sales tax over the operating costs. Projecting out into the next couple years, we have incorporated a number of things we know are coming. The CIP operating costs are anticipated and planned for in the next 4 years out, as well as other additional operating costs you expect, such as electrical, water increases. We have put in salary increases in this forecast also. I believe they start in year 13. And then probably the thing that sticks out the most here would be the increase in revenue in the last 2 years, and it's primarily due to the mall. So all in all, for this year, again, we're happy and pleased to say that we are looking good. Moving ahead, although our estimates are probably conservative on the revenue side, we'll revisit those and redo this forecast next year. Any questions on this?
And let us stress, this is all draft tonight, so anything you want to look at, us to look at more carefully, and Joanne, we will address the issues that you raised this afternoon later in the discussion. But any issues you want us to look at, please raise them.
Did you say this general fund forecast that has construction sales tax in it?
Yes, it does. It's everything in the general fund, transfers in, out, right? And that's basically what's causing.
You may have it coming, but I like the forecast, but I would like to see the operating general fund, just a slide that shows it without the sales tax.
Without the,
We do have it coming.
since we're,
Okay.
You're such a good straight man, Joe.
All right.
And this forecast also does not include any change in any other categories of sales tax. I mean, correct?
Correct.
That's
It's
correct.
only including this first quarter percent for
That's correct.
food, but not, okay.
Actually, in this, the food tax is incorporated at
Right.
the change for this year, and then it's doubled in the years out.
Okay.
So we
So you
did make that
include
assumption to double that in the years out, right?
Okay.
So from
But nothing
375 for modeling, it went to 750 as a reduction. So some of the measures we've taken over the last couple of years as we've come back to, no surprise here, we've reduced expenditures to the magnitude of probably over $10 million. This year, we did our best to hold the line on reoccurring expenses. You will see some line item adds, again, basically for operational costs that we just couldn't absorb within those budgets. We froze or eliminated a number of positions. I just jotted down some notes here, about 13% over the last couple years from a high of 592, and right now we're about right down to 500 or so. We'll talk a little bit more about those later too. We're able to manage to the available revenues that are here. I think I can remind you all again about the development revenues and how those basically plummeted over $12 million. Construction sales tax, again, in double-digit drops. We've been able to manage the budgets and bring those expenditures down to match the revenues. We've restructured debt to allow the utility funds to be self-sufficient. We've been conservative in our budgeting. We have not had planned for a tax increase with these sales tax estimates. Once again, we have over the last couple years deferred some maintenance projects and a number of capital projects just due to lack of funding.
Are you at liberty at the present time to tell us what positions might be eliminated?
Yes, we will talk about them specifically in a few moments.
Okay, thank you.
And there aren't a whole lot. I mean, it's just swapping basically.
Okay, all right.
Joe, so here's a slide that does not include construction sales tax. This is an overview of the general fund operating budget. As you can see, moving over to the right-hand column, proposed 1112, ongoing sources of 62. That main bump is due to the state share revenues, and then our sales tax are remaining strong. I'll get into more detail on the assumptions we use to do the revenue forecasting and the major categories here in a minute. But again, pointing out that we are finally positive, which is a good thing.
So I just want to stress this once more. I mean, that's $100,000 positive, including the ballpark, excluding construction sales taxes. We're totally balanced.
Are we, I don't know if it's going to be tonight, are we going to have a presentation at some point on the ballpark to try to come up with some ideas on how to close that 7.7?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Okay, so now this is a revenue summary, again, broke down by major category type. In response to a request, we have broke out the sales tax, the percent increase, and also, as you can see, we've incorporated the decrease for the food tax. Once again, want to point out the increase in state shared as a result of the census tally. Did very well there. We are expecting the development related to decrease just slightly. And construction sales tax, you see we broke out, and it's on the bottom line there, but again, that'll be held flat. And I'll talk further in revenue detail here in a minute.
And about 2 hours ago, I sent out an update for you all on development revenues for last month. And last month is certainly no getting back to the growth that we were experiencing, but it was a relatively good month. And it was the highest month in 11 months, so that was encouraging.
So revenues are estimated up 7% from this year's estimate of $54 million, which is slightly higher than the budget amount. So all in all, again, good news. Things are starting to go the right way. Here's a chart for sales tax. I think you probably get these monthly, and so you may have already seen it. Just want to point out again, total sales tax is up 8% from prior year. Year-to-date actual to the budget is up 4%, so we are anticipating that to come in over. Non-sales tax construction category is up 10% from prior year. Retail sales remains up almost 4%. Restaurant and bar, nearly 5%. And then construction sales tax, you can see there, we're down this year compared to last year. We reduced the budget basically to nothing, to about $3 million. So we are up year-to-date budget to actual. But again, the reason for that is because we drastically reduced the budget for that. This is just a slide again. I think you've seen this before. You get it in your packet. It's on non-construction sales tax. So this would be total construction sales tax we were talking about. Just to point out again, it's at 68% of the year-to-date, which if you can see, the other percentages have been lower. So again, it's coming in strong. We're expecting that to be slightly over budget. Same chart for construction sales tax, probably not as pretty. Going the other way, although it remains at 76% through the end of March, it's probably going to come in right at 3 or a little bit above is what we're estimating. And again, we've estimated that for next year at flat at $3 million.
Went the wrong way.
Nope, I think we're okay. Expenditures.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And just kind of bouncing back to what John said about the development-related revenues, March was a strong month. However, trending, it does show that it's down 30% from the prior years. Any questions on the revenues or the assumptions or any trending that we've done? If not, I'll move ahead to the expenditures. This is basically base budget to base budget with some adjustments for anything that happened in the salary category. We'll get more into detail as far as the retirement rates have changed, the health insurance has changed, and so that is incorporated. You'll see that as ongoing supplement, if you will, to the budget. Contractual and commodities, we pretty much held the line to that. I'll identify the $1.1 million in additional costs in a minute, but as you can see, it ties out to the $54 million, and it is balanced with available ongoing revenue. It's up 4% from prior year. I think this is really consistent with what we had demonstrated in the sales tax dashboard when we were doing the modeling for the next 5 years.
Again, you'll explain a little later. You'll tie back in that 1.1 million?
Two
Yes.
slides.
Yeah, okay.
John, as far as salaries are concerned, is there anything in the budget that adjusts salaries across the board?
No, sir. We'll talk about those specifically in a moment.
Okay. I'm ahead
Mandated.
of you on 2 issues already.
I also wanted to just bring to your attention, we've had a number of things that have been in flux, and we have incorporated right up to the latest date. These were changes, the first two were changes from the state budget that we kind of just alluded to a minute ago. Highway user fund went up, then it went down. Department of Water Resources are trying to balance out their fund there, so they've allocated, again, a proration of that fund. I think it's $7 million to all the cities and towns. And then the state retirement system at the last moment, legislation changed on that too, so they're going to shift. We used to pay 50-50 for the retirement, 50% from the employee, 50% from the city. Now that'll be 3% more for the employees.
What does that? How does that break down? That was
That's-
that was my question. Did it go to Did it go to 11% employer, and it's higher now for the employees? How does that break
No,
down?
the rate went up a little bit. It's still, believe it's still at 10%, 10 something. But the proration of that shifted. So the city is only carrying 47% of the burden, and then the employees got the other 3%.
Can you say that a little bit louder in the microphone so people can hear that?
So, yeah, the rate did increase. And
Okay.
like I said, I think it's around 10, a little bit higher than 10. And we knew that was coming, but this last minute change, so now out of that percentage, the employer only pays 47%, and then the employees picked up the other 3% for a 53% contribution.
I just want to make sure I understand right. If the total is 20%, then 47% is the employers of the 20%, and 53% of the 20% would be the employees.
Correct,
Is
for the
that correct?
total amount paid in,
Okay.
yes.
So in other words, their increase this year will be higher as a percentage of their check than it was before. And even the percentage, it was 50-50, now it's going 53-47. I just want to make sure I understand it correctly.
Right, it will be higher out of everyone that belongs to the Arizona State retirement system.
What is their percentage? What is the employee's?
I don't think hers, still not working.
11.85.
So I was, yeah, I don't have it. I think
We
it's
don't have that with us. 11.85. 11.4.
And it used to be a match,
Right.
so it was 11.4.
Yeah, I just want to make
sides.
sure I understand it correctly. Okay.
Okay. There have been a number.
Excuse me, mention the savings to the city because of the 90,000.
Yes, and so because the city costs decreased, there will be $90,000 in savings associated with that particular expense. And that's just in general fund only.
And Dick, here are the discussions about the positions.
Okay, just a high-level preview here. Happy to say one of the top priorities will be to fill the executive assistant position to the mayor and council. As John alluded to, Sandra, as a trainer, will be moving back to HR, and we'll be starting up the training program again. We did have a retirement in community development. They will be eliminating that administrative assistant position, and we are looking to add one development process administrator position within the economic development budget. Another number of other changes would include eliminating.
Can we stop you right there? Could you tell us what the Economic Development Process Administrator will be doing?
That will be discussed at the council advance. I mean, we don't know yet. We're identifying it, and we're budgeting for it, but we are still working on it.
Is that, I guess I'm questioning that, so is that sort of our business liaison?
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
All right, thank you. Did you see everybody look towards you, John?
Basically, there's no net gain, right,
Correct.
on positions, Dick. So we're swapping out a couple positions, but there's no net additional employees.
Okay.
Is it,
Not one department is going to be hurt at all.
No.
Okay.
let me ask you this, John. You're swapping out those positions, but below you have eliminating, what, 3 more positions? Am I reading that correct? Other changes? Eliminating community advocate funding, redirect to customer service.
Correct.
Eliminating recycling coordinator and eliminate sanitation worker. So is there an actual reduction?
No, these are
No.
positions that have been frozen that are no longer going to be.
And so
that
we're
will be
eliminating
filled.
them because the council's policy last year was to not.
Not to carry them.
Okay.
That's what you all agreed upon.
Okay.
It's not to carry them over.
I got you. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll move forward to, there'll be further discussion on this by the managers and the directors from the various departments here. Total ads, we have 4 things that we just weren't able to absorb in the budget, and you can see by the magnitude of cost that it comes to it's almost $1.2 million. Again.
Keep getting towards that microphone because your voice is lower and fast. So,
Fast and
people,
low.
yeah, that's what happens. People cannot distinguish what you're saying. I know it's terribly hit you like that. But
No, it's okay.
Yeah, okay.
So with the ads, again, it's almost $1.2 million, and I just want to point out that as we have the revenue estimates in and we are able to balance the budget, these costs have been incorporated into the balanced budget.
This radio increased costs, so that's not considered capital because that's part of it?
It's
This
operating.
is our operating
Yes.
costs? Okay.
And
And these are consistent with what we identified for you, I think it was in November, when we presented the total plan to you. We also presented what there would be in terms of additional operating costs.
And the fire services for Cimarron Valley, that's if we do the 2-man crew down there, or is that?
We have a presentation on that this evening. This is for most of the 2-man crew, but now we're looking at even a different option.
cool. Thank you.
And Paul Louisi will talk about that in a moment.
I'm just going to talk.
I got a quick question for some of the food service. I don't even know if this fits in. I'm trying to talk really
Take a
loud.
microphone, please.
Dick and I will share. Does this include, or have we fit in anything for, obviously, I hear talk of fuel costs just going through the roof this summer. Do we build that in, or do we build any type of buffer in our budget for that? So we're not
Yes,
surprised.
I forget, it's 100 and we put in for police.
It's 220.
Oh, right there,
That's,
220.
Yeah, that's
Oh, that's.
That's,
So that is-
That's the increase.
yes, it is. Yeah, our costs are going up.
Are there any questions on any part of the balanced budget?
No, I guess the health services will have a we'll have a presentation
A
on that
total
one as well.
presentation,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, this concludes my part of the presentation, again, on the general fund operating budget.
At this point, we'd ask Jeannie to come up. Jeannie Ruddy is our Human Resources Manager, and Jeannie will talk about the compensation plan for the employees and where we stand within the compensation plan from the comparative cities that we use by council policy to compare ourselves with and review those policies with us. Jeannie?
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, Mayor Lord, Vice Mayor Pizzillo, and council members.
Can you speak into that mic? I can hear you, but I know they can't hear because you're not close enough.
Thank you. I'd like to start out by talking about why it's important to have an effective compensation plan. And the city's compensation plan was one of the most important elements of its human resources programs. And the reason for that is because basically it supports virtually every other element of the human resources functions, including recruitment and retention. So, for example, by we want to attract and retain qualified, high-performing, talented employees, and we want to be able to recruit and compete for those that other cities and towns are competing for that same talent. Performance management. Through our merit program, we reward good performance, and at the current time, that program is suspended. Then we have workforce planning and resource allocation. We want to effectively and efficiently manage our financial resources. We don't want to be underpaying employees, but we definitely don't want to be overpaying employees and using resources that can be used for other things. And then there's training. So training supports promotions, and it supports our criteria-based promotion program, which is currently suspended. So what we want to do is an effective compensation plan helps to ensure internal equity and external competitiveness. At this point in time, we're ineffective at both.
We're what?
Ineffective.
Ineffective.
I have a question on that. How many people have quit in the last year or so due to that? Do we know, or do we have any numbers on that we've lost?
We have numbers, and we do track why employees leave, so we could provide that to you. I don't have that number today. Yes.
And it really isn't that high yet. What we're concerned about is what's going to happen when Phoenix starts hiring 600 police officers, when Chandler starts hiring. When the others start hiring, it's going to be cannibalism between cities.
Well, and also some of the cities continue to increase.
Police and fire especially,
Police and fire
yes.
in other cities, so, I mean, we have to consider that.
I have some examples for you.
And I'm sorry, so we broke down police and fire and then just other personnel too. So we can look at it, like break them apart when we're looking at it.
Yes.
Yes. So I wanted to review a little bit our salary and benefit survey process. We've selected our benchmark positions, and we review the same positions annually. For consistency, the same positions are surveyed each year unless we're finding that we don't have a match with other cities, or we find out that we have eliminated that position from our structure, then we no longer survey that. But we survey all 5 of our sworn police positions, all 5 of our fire sworn positions, 19 exempt positions, and 10 non-exempt. The reason why we survey more non-exempt than we do, or excuse me, exempt than we do non-exempt.
Could you just do this for the public listening to this? Could you tell them the difference between an exempt and non-exempt? This happens every year, and so many new people are listening. If you could go ahead.
We put salaried in there, so exempt positions are those positions in the city that do not receive overtime. They're salaried. They receive the same amount of pay each pay period. And non-exempt are hourly employees that are paid overtime. The easiest way to remember that is you're exempt from overtime. So if you remember that you're exempt from overtime, that kind of helps to remember that.
Thank you.
The reason why we survey more exempt positions is because they're usually single incumbent positions, and there's less incumbents in there to use their salaries as an example in the survey. Then we survey our non-healthcare benefits, and those are paid leave, those are specialty pays, assignment pay, tuition reimbursement, car allowance, things like that we also survey. Our survey is emailed to our benchmark cities, and we do so around the middle to end of November and start collecting data in December.
Let me ask you a question. You survey 5 sworn police positions?
And that's all of the
Just 5.
sworn, that we have only 5 sworn positions. So,
No,
yeah.
so that's sergeant, police officer, lieutenant. So that's what we mean by position.
How is the fire broken down?
The fire is broken down
Fire
by
engineer, firefighter.
fire engineer, fire captain, battalion chief, and deputy.
So it covers
fire
all
chief.
the positions, Councilmember.
Now, just a quick question. When you survey, as I recall, there's like 20 steps at the city. Do you survey typically what they're hired at or what the average is instead of what step 1 is and step 20 is? Because I know some cities shrink it. You know, they only have like 10 steps. We may have twice as many steps. So are we comparing apples and apples when we compare who's getting paid and at what entry levels they're coming in at?
We did do this year because we found out that that was true. We were asking the question for the salary range for these positions, and the other cities were responding. But I guess how we needed to reword it was, what is your hiring range? They were giving us a range that they were hiring police or fire in at step 5, and they weren't even using the first 4 steps. So we didn't know this because they were responding to the survey data like this, and we found that out accidentally through another survey, and we changed all of our data.
So you are now trying to compare their hiring ranges as opposed to everybody's hiring range versus?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question. Why do we have so many steps? I never understood that. I learned that we have like twice as many. Why? I guess I don't know why.
Well, each city has a different compensation philosophy and a different plan. They're not all exactly alike. And our compensation plan, we have a pay for performance. Some other cities may say that they have pay for performance, but it looks to us more like longevity. If you're there and you're performing successfully, you get a 1-step increase, and for them that may be 5%. In our city, we have a true pay for performance that based on your performance appraisal rating, if you're successful, you receive a 1-step, which is 2.5%, and if you're outstanding, you receive a 2-step increase, which is 5%. So that's how we work our compensation plan through our merit program. This slide shows our benchmark cities and towns, and these were selected and approved by council in the beginning of 2008 when we were conducting a salary survey through an outside consultant. And the criteria that's basically used is commonality of positions. So these cities and towns, for the most part, we have the same type of positions. And then competition for jobs. We're competing for the same applicants, and they have the same, we have the same pool. Location and proximity. Sometimes that doesn't always work. Sometimes we have employees that they may live in Surprise and they found a job in Goodyear and it worked for them then, but now they want to move back and they want to live and work in the same town. Services provided, for the most part, we all provide the same services as cities and towns. And comparable size. This is the one that seems to be discussed the most by different people, and they say, well, why would we compare Goodyear to the city of Phoenix? They're so much larger than us. And let me give you an example. Right now, the city of Phoenix has a firefighter position open, and not just one, but 42 of them. And rumor has it that 10 of our firefighters have applied for that position. So while they're a lot different in size, again, we still have the same type of positions. Our location is close, and we're competing for the same pool of employees.
Yes, go ahead, Jerry. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Can you speak in the mic and pull it up close, please?
I said that Phoenix is using stimulus money to hire these extra firefighters, and we didn't get that extra money. So I see the comparison, but I don't see the comparison.
I have to agree. I don't see the comparison. I think you have to break police and fire out because those are similar jobs that you're going to do no matter what the size is. I mean, you're going to have a 4-man truck or a 2-man car no matter the size of your city. I think when we're looking like other areas like department head, if you have a water services of 700 people, that's more than our whole city. So to say our water service managers are going to make as much as someone in Phoenix when they manage 700 people, you have different department sizes. So I do have problems with some of those. The police and fire, not so much, because I think you have the same job duties, if that makes any sense, whereas your management and some of your other jobs, I don't see, I see different business sizes there.
Anybody else have any opinion on that?
No,
Go ahead. What do we do, what do we have to do to become competitive with the cities that appear here, that we list here?
We will show you in a moment what we have to do.
Well, we just keep
three
jumping
times
ahead.
on them all, John.
You'll have to. You see, we're really listening tonight, so we'll wait, right?
Yeah.
no, I tend to agree the stimulus is different, but the problem's going to be is if the position is the same position, whatever it is, whether it's fire, police, or an analyst or whatever, and they're paying more, and when they start actually recruiting, and it's probably not too far down the corner, then if you had a setup cost of 50 or whatever it is to train, and I'm sure HR has some numbers that can show what recidivism costs and what it costs to train new employees, regardless whether it's police, fire, or any employee, if I was in another city, I would have a tendency to go, if somebody's already trained, all I have to do is bring them up to speed on my culture. You know, all's love, all's fair in love and war. I'm going for the employee with the best and the brightest, regardless of what city it is. So that's concern, not necessarily right now. Concern is what's going to happen a year, 2 years from now if we happen to be at the bottom end. And I just kind of throw that out for discussion for other members up here, is try to stay ahead of the curve, not once it happens, then it's already happened. It's too late to respond. So.
Joe, I think what you're saying also is that, you know, for Sherry, if a water resources manager in Phoenix resigns, our water resources managers are fully qualified to take their job. That's where the competition comes in. That's where the pay equalization comes in. So theoretically, all of the valley, all of those cities, those people will be the ones competing for any position open in any of these other cities.
And I don't see it when you're looking at the difference, because if you look at a business, a person in a smaller business is going to make less money many times than someone in a larger, like someone who has a small company is going to make less than the CEO of GM. And I don't think you can compare the two, I guess, is the problem I have with that. I know there's training costs, and there's different when you have to get your AZ post certification and those certifications, and that does concern me because that's kind of a safety issue. But when you're talking about other positions, to put us at the same level as Phoenix, and I know Phoenix is still cutting with their budget, so they're not going to be hiring anytime soon. And people, when the economy improves, are going to go to the private sector maybe. I mean, we should pay fairly, of course, but I guess what I'm hearing, the groundwork laying here is some larger increase, and I guess I have a problem. We still have that 5% increase that we told our citizens that was only going to be temporary. And until we get that off of there, I guess that's kind of where I'm...
You're talking about sales tax?
Yeah, the sales tax.
And we talked about that last time, and I questioned that, and it would be next year's budget.
Yes.
That our time's up, and that's why we need to make sure that our budget is well balanced this year, along with the decrease in the grocery tax, and that next year we'll be ready to take that tax off.
Not off, but we will be ready to start addressing the tax.
Addressing it.
Yes. And Sherry, I agree with you, but I would not say that we're laying the groundwork for more increases, as you will see it if we get to keep going.
We're jumping ahead again, aren't we?
Yes. We have a differentiation between police, a differentiation between fire, and a differentiation between salaried, exempt, and non-exempt. I mean, so police and fire need increases more than exempt or non-exempt.
And that's what I'm saying. I think that's what I'm saying
Well,
in the areas where there's
and
a
we've
public
done
or
that
health
type of analysis.
Okay. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
We
Well,
all are,
but-
don't worry.
And I think some of the issue too, I know you're looking at Phoenix, but if you look at all of them, we also have Avondale. I mean, there's cities in there that are comparable to Goodyear. However, seeing the larger scale and seeing the smaller scale and seeing where we fit in between all those is something that we look at. However, at the end of the day, what is best for Goodyear is really the key thing, no matter what some other cities are doing. That's my feeling about it, is we can always look at benchmarks. Those are always good to compare with, but what is best for Goodyear at the end of the day? And moving on, I've been quiet, I'm just waiting. Keep going.
Go ahead, Jeannie.
Okay.
Here is 11 years of history of the city's market position. And the two bars that are in burgundy shows the years that we had an outside consultant do a class comp study. And the other purple, blue colors are the years that the city did their own internal survey, the process that we just discussed. The green that takes you from the purple bar up to the red line is the market adjustment that was provided that year to employees to bring us to that market position. The 106, the 2 years the city was at 106% of the market and 103% of the market, those were approved by council, and as you can see from that point on, it has fluctuated and gone up or down somewhat based on availability of funds. It really didn't stay consistent with the 106 or the 103 that was approved back in between 2001 and 2003. So the market has remained pretty steady over the last 3 years. Pay cuts administered by other cities, along with increases that have been paid by other cities, have basically kind of washed itself out. So you can see that we've remained pretty steady. There's been some cities that have had pay cuts, as we know of, and then there's been police and fire in some cities that have still remained to get increases. The biggest contributing factor to the city's continuing lag in the market is attributed to the police and fire structures, and we're going to talk about that shortly. The structures have not been adjustments since July of 2008, and even during that time, it was necessary to make adjustments to those structures. Several other cities have continued to give fire step increases. Example is Peoria, Phoenix, Chandler, Glendale, and Tempe have given increases to their fire, and some of them even PD. This increase the market average, while our midpoint has remained the same. And to give you an example, fire this fiscal year gave their fire employees sworn a 5.8% increase, and that was just basically, they call it a pay adjustment. And in addition, they got their merit or their step increase as well. For PD, they received a 7.15% increase or adjustment in addition to their step increase.
And you're saying that those two departments received those increases, what city was this?
Phoenix.
Phoenix, but yet they did not give any increases to rest of the employees?
They did. They had other MOUs that they gave increases to, and then what they also did is, because these adjustments were based on what their MOUs stated, then the city even gave an overall reduction of 1%, including police and fire. So they got their step increases, they got adjustments, pay adjustments according to what their compensation plan is, and then they got a 1% decrease.
Is that because some of those MOUs were already pre-negotiated with some of the other departments, so they were already basically pre-negotiated before that, so they couldn't reduce?
Yes.
And because I know they also went on furloughs there too, so
Yes.
they let them have their increase and then they furloughed them.
Yes.
Took the money back.
So it was a wash.
And some of them opened their MOUs and they renegotiated some things in other cities as well.
That was a mind play.
This chart shows 3-year history of our market position by salary structure. And again, we have the exempt or the salary structure, the non-exempt, the hourly employees. We have fire and police. Overall, our market position is 96.7, you'll see in the last column. Exempt market position is at 106%, and basically it's up last year 1.4%. This is attributed to several single incumbent jobs in that structure. Some of them are vacant. Some of them were vacant last year, and then all of a sudden also the salary reductions. The non-exempt market position is 99.7. It's slightly lower than last year and pretty consistent with over the last 3 years. Our fire market position is down 2.6% since January of 2009. As mentioned previously, this is attributed to other cities still continuing to give increases to their fire personnel, and we haven't made any adjustments to our structure. For police, their market position stayed relatively the same of last year, but it's down from 2009 by 1%. I want to talk a little bit about defining what market position is. This is somewhat a little difficult for some to understand. Really, our market position at 96.7 is the city's midpoint compared to market average. We have a salary range where it's a 48% spread, and right in the middle, we consider that basically 100% of the market, or average, when we're looking at our salary structures. What it's not it's not what employees are actually making. So when you see that 96.7% number, or you see the 93 point something that we show for fire, we're not looking at our employees and what we're making. We're looking at what other cities' employees are making. We're averaging that, and we're trying to make our salary structure competitive with what's average out there in the market.
And how are we doing in that position at the present time?
At the present time, we're lagging.
We're lacking.
We're lagging. We're at 96.7. Now, you could say that if our market position, if we wanted to be at 100%, non-exempt is pretty close, and exempt is close right now based on the salary cuts that other cities have made. As we said, the contributing factor to that 96.7 is our police and fire structures.
If in the last cost of living adjustment was the actual last incentive to employees, as far as I know, in 2008.
Yes.
And going forward, I believe that we've had a cost of living increase for the next years after that of almost 5%. If we were to say for city employees, exempt, non-exempt, whichever, that we were to give a 1.5% cost of living increase, what type of increase would that help change that market position?
Okay, giving employees an increase of 1.5% would not change our market position.
Okay.
Because, again, we say the market position is not what our employees are making. So what we usually do is there's two steps when we compensate employees in our compensation plan. The first step is to look at the structure and make sure we're competitive with the market. And when you say cost of living, the city has never done a cost of living increase since I've been here or that I'm aware of.
What was 08 then? What was that considered?
It's called a market adjustment.
Okay.
And a cost of living adjustment is when you look at the CPI and you adjust it based on consumer price index.
Mm-hmm.
And what we look at is, because we do salary surveys and we're comparing our structure to other cities' average salaries, we call that a cost of labor adjustment. So that's why we call it a market adjustment instead of a cost of living. And so other cities will just take and they'll look and they'll say, okay, gas has gone up and food costs have gone up and all these things have gone up, and we're going to give our employees a 3% cost of living adjustment.
Right.
So what we do, instead of that, we look at actually what other employees are making, and we do a cost of labor adjustment. And that's our market adjustment. And so if we give them a 1.5% increase, it will not change our market position. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, I know it can be confusing.
I'm sorry, Councilman Souza.
So if we are not competitive with other cities from a salary standpoint, then the charges that were made during the past election that were overpaying our personnel in the city was really untrue.
That's untrue.
A little louder. A little louder.
Yeah, I think he'd like you to say it a sentence.
As you can see from the last table that Jeannie reviewed, it's untrue by the fact that police are at 92.4%,
Right.
fire is at 90 whatever, and yeah, it's untrue.
Thank you, John.
If I'm jumping ahead, you can yell at me. What do we have to do? Because what worries me is we have police at 92, fire at 94, the non-exempt and the exempt, they're almost at one's above 100. So I'm okay with that, but how do we bring them up to 100? I mean, what do we need to do if 1%?
Well,
how do we do that?
we do several steps first. Sometimes it's not always moving the step, because we need to look at how many steps are in each structure, and of course that varies by city. So you may have an engineer, and in another city they might only have 6 steps and ours has 12 or ours has 14. But we look at that all the time, and we try to compare and make sure that our range in our step is comparable with other cities first. And sometimes what we have to do is we have to take the entry step and we move it to the end, so that now our step 1 is really the salary of a step 2. And so now we have a new entry step, and we do that first, and we take our firefighters or police officers that are at that entry step and we move them to the new entry step. So we do that first, and we make range adjustments, and then we look at how much we need to move the whole structure. And so it's kind of a multiple step process in that. Councilmember Loretano asked that magical question, what do we need to do to fix it? Well, I thought about that all day today, because I thought that might be a question that you would ask. And I thought, I think you have to tell me how much money we have first. If you tell me how much money we have first, then I can pick the best option, but just going out there and saying, how do we fix it? Because I could tell you really how we fix it, but I'd come back with a number that you just would not like at all.
I'm going to be real circular. How much money does it take to fix it? I don't know what 90.
John said he was going to come back to that.
Well, one of the real problems we have is like right now we're recruiting, I forget the number, 4 police officers. We're going to hire those officers and they're going to come on board. They are going to be making the same amount of money that the officers we hired 3 years ago are making. That's what we're breaking down the incentives.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's causing morale problems in this city and other cities. I mean, so we have a mess that we all have to get out of. How we're going to get out of that, I don't know yet. So we're still working on it.
It's not just the city of Goodyear, and I have some numbers with you because we're going into our 4th year of no merit increases. Even if we made all of our structures at 100%, but we don't have any way of moving our employees through the structure with the merit, we are not going to be competitive. Our employees will not be competitive. As John said, we have 20, which is 30% of our sworn staff that are at the entry step, and May 2nd we have 3 police officers starting at the same pay. So,
And why is that?
because we've had no merit increases, so they can't move through the range. So even if we made our ranges competitive, if you have no way to move the employees through the salary range by giving them merit increases, then they're still at entry
Stay
step.
stagnant.
And we're not the only city.
We are
that
not
this
the
has
only
All
cities.
cities are in the same problem.
Yes, it's a challenge. Now for police and fire, not all. As we talked about, they're giving some fire and police
Other
increases.
cities are giving the incentive to the fire and police, but not us.
Correct.
Yet.
And a few of them are still giving it to all their employees. Chandler is one that comes to mind right now.
And some of those, again, were like agreements that were made before with
Before.
police and fire, so they're basically choosing not to reopen them, like Phoenix may say, we're not choosing to reopen our agreements.
They tried to reopen them, but they
And
wouldn't
they-
reopen.
That's what I mean, they said they would not reopen them, because they had a good deal.
Yeah. Okay.
And while we talk specifically about police and fire, we will have the same compression if you're talking about a parks worker or a groundskeeper, that we have multiple incumbents in that position and we're still hiring when there's turnover. It's going to still be in that anyways. The only way you get out of that is if you're hiring a single incumbent position that leaves the city. Then when they come, you hire the new person to fill it. There's not an issue with making sure that you have your internal equity with that same position, because you definitely don't want to hire someone in that has, even if they do have more experience, at a higher rate than your current employee that you have in that position. When employees have no way of moving through the range, there's no way to make, basically, with our ranges, there are about 18 steps. So step 9 we consider to be the midpoint. If you're an outstanding employee, you'll get to the midpoint after 4 years. If you're a successful employee, you'll get there in 8 years. And we have employees that are outstanding that are still at step 1 of their hiring range.
Why do we have so many steps?
Because
Was it from the benchmark program we adopted?
no, it's just what's average out there. So if you look at other cities and their compensation program,
They've all
they
got
may,
22 steps?
well, a lot of them, some of them don't even have steps. Ours have steps, and that's what was selected by executive, and a lot of them do have steps as well, but some of them just have ranges, and our ranges happen to be 48%, which is about average in the market. So if you divide that up over 2.5%, that's how many steps you get with a spread of 48%.
Again, if I'm getting ahead, just yell at me. Then why don't we look to change our steps instead of saying 2.5%? If we want to be competitive, I'm going to stay somewhere where, when I get my review, when times get better, that I'm going to get my 5% rather than, well, I'm just going to get 2.5%. Why don't we look to change that? I don't know.
We would just be changing our compensation philosophy if that's what council wanted to do. At this point, you're differentiating between a successful employee and an outstanding employee, and that's what they wanted to do. They wanted 2.5% for successful employees, and if you're outstanding, you move through the salary range quicker, and you receive more money than a successful performer.
How many do we have that get outstanding? Is it something like where everybody's a B student, or do we have a lot that get outstanding? What are our percentages?
The last number I
If
heard,
it's not awarded a lot, it's not really an incentive. If you know there's really no way you're going to get that extra
It's
2.5%.
not one.
I haven't looked at it recently, but within the last year, it was about 60% of our employees were outstanding.
But yet, it's been 3 years since any of that has occurred anyway.
But we're still doing the same program. They're not getting a merit increase tied to their rating, but they're still getting ratings of successful and outstanding, and the supervisors are still doing a great job of honestly rating their performance.
But that only lasts so long.
And so when you get those super ratings outstandings, you get then the compensation when the pay is there. Do we compensate back to where they're at? Because it seems like now you've moved up the steps, so you'll be out of steps, and it's not
So the
going to work.
compensation is
It's not
negative.
going to work.
There's no way that we can go back and redo compensation in that fashion. I personally think, we haven't really discussed this with Jeannie or anybody, but I personally think that we need another compensation study to get out of this. I mean, we need a compensation study done like was done in the 2 purple years or the 2 maroon years in order to allow us to get out of this mess that all the cities are in. And that was $75,000 or something
Yes.
like that.
You know what bothers me is that if these other cities are moving up their salary ranges, where are they getting this money that we can't get to accommodate our
Well,
people?
the city of Phoenix, for example, is, if you read the papers,
Yeah, budget
was
problems.
$270 million in the hole last year. They're happy because into this year they're only $60 million in the hole. Other cities, Chandler, I think, has a $20 million shortfall. I don't know where they're getting their money, but it's choice of priorities. That's all.
Almost like the federal government today.
Except none of us can print money.
Well, I guess for all said and done, I mean, you're looking at a budget, and again, I suspect some of them are tapping their rainy day fund, or because they can't print money either. So if they've got a $60 million shortfall and they're still doing it, they got to be tapping the rainy day fund or something to do that because they can't
But
print
that's
it either.
one-time
So-
money.
Yeah,
It's one-time money, so it's
but-
not.
And we will show you, Mr. Pizzillo, later what the rainy day funds in all the other cities are.
Well, should we give them a chance to progress? All right.
Yeah.
You've got the floor.
Okay. So the next slide talks a little bit about our benefits lost. So we've seen this several times, and since July 1 of 2008, and will be maintained through fiscal year 12, the suspension of our merit program that allows our employees to move through the ranges. Then we put into effect July 1, 2009, suspensions, no market adjustments, suspension of tuition reimbursement and uniform allowance, it was cut in half for firefighters, and suspension of automatic time and a half paid on a holiday. So FLSA doesn't require us to pay overtime for that, but we just thought it was a nice thing to do if you have to work on a holiday and be away from your family. Then effective July 1st, 2010, we suspended longevity, our retirement health savings account, our criteria-based promotion program, and vacation cash-in.
And all of these were on top of each other, and they're all still in place.
This is a chart that we put together that would help you see how over the last 3 fiscal years, or I guess 4, including the current one coming up, fiscal year 12, how employees' gross average pay has been adjusted just because of two items. If you look at the top row of numbers, this is for non-sworn, and the average base pay for a non-sworn position is $60,772. Back in 08-09, their annual family PPO premium was $19.86. Their annual ASRS contribution at that point was $9.45, was $57.43, and their adjusted gross pay was $53.043. So if we look down to the next column, employees' pay has not changed, so their average pay has stayed the same. Their annual PPO premium for fiscal year 12 that's proposed is increasing to $34.34, which is an increase in their paycheck based on 08-09 to fiscal year 12 is a difference of 73%, or $14.48. Their annual ASRS that Terry discussed earlier will be going from 9.85 to 11.4 this fiscal year, starting July 1st, and that difference is 11.85, which is a difference of 21% between 08-09 and fiscal year 12. So the adjusted gross difference between 08-09 and July 1st, 2012 will be $2,633 in their annual take-home, which is 5%.
And that's if the price of gas was staying the same and price of groceries and everything else.
And what this,
I have a question. For the PPO plan, you have though here that the most popular is the high deductible plan. Does that change that number at all?
the reason why we couldn't use the high deductible is because we've only had it for 1 year. So we used the plan that we had history with. That's a good question.
And excuse me, the ASRS, is that required of a police officer?
Well, the next slide is going to show sworn, which is basically the same, but it's required, ASRS is required for all non-sworn, and public safety retirement is required for all sworn positions. They don't have an option. What this also doesn't include is throughout these last 3 years, there have been plan design changes where employees have had higher deductibles and higher co-pays. Now, we can't show that in their paycheck, but we know that that's definitely happening, and Dean will be showing that in his presentation.
But again, the ASRS is out of our hands. That's not our decision.
Correct. And it's out of the employee's hands. So people may say, well, it's their problem. They need health insurance, and it's their retirement plan. But these are things that the employees don't have a choice. It just comes out. And I'm sure if they could choose, just like if you have the option to participate in a 457, if you can't afford it, you suspend your contributions. And employees don't have the option for that.
And if we hadn't had the reductions in the deductibles and the co-insurances, certainly that would have been reflected in the increased premium that they would be paying.
Correct.
So 6 of one and a half, dozen of the other. I think our figures prove that with the reduction of benefit, that we could substantially save in premium on a monthly basis.
Absolutely.
So that's the reason the suggestion was made by the benefit committee, employee benefit committee. So.
You're right. That's correct. Our next slide shows the same, but for sworn positions. The average salary is slightly less at $59,779. Of course, the insurance premium is the same, whether you're sworn or non-sworn for your health insurance. And public safety was $7.65 up until this fiscal year, upcoming fiscal year. There's a Senate Bill 1609 that is now on the governor's desk for signature. And since I've been here in 2002, this 7.65 has not changed. In basically the statutes, the employee always pays a fixed amount, and when the actuarial evaluation is completed, it's the employer contribution that changes. So it fluctuates up and down each year, and we change the employer side, but the employee side has been fixed at 7.65. The bill that's on the desk for the governor to sign right now is proposing a 2% increase for July 1 of this fiscal year, taking it to 9.75, then another 1% in 13, and another 1% in 14 to bring them up to 11.65.
What does the employer stay the same?
The employers will fluctuate as well.
Yes, Joanne.
So it depends on what the actuarial evaluation comes out. Like you said, if it comes out to be 20%, or 25%, then they take the employee's portion off first, and the remainder would be the employer's portion.
But when it comes to us, back to market comparison, all cities are going to have those same figures for the retirement.
Yes,
okay.
that is correct.
For sworn or not sworn. And then so really it comes down to our base pay and our health insurance, correct? Because that's really not even a factor in consideration, because it's going to be the same everywhere.
Yes.
So in comparison on our health insurance to other cities, where do we stand in that? And comparison to our base pay to other cities, where do we compare to that?
And next presentation will be Dean Kogenhauer on the health insurance.
John, do you think it would be helpful for us to have a work session on this? Just on this?
On what? I'm sorry.
On this presentation today?
You mean on
On the
further
compensation?
salary and benefits?
Sure.
I mean, I'm looking around the table, and you're all asking questions, and you don't seem to be satisfied in any of the answers, and you want to hear more information and more. Am I correct in getting that assumption from you all?
Right, because I would like to see, what effect a 1%, 2%, 3% increase in salaries would have effect on this budget. To see, if we can accommodate some percentage of that for employee compensation.
Certainly.
Well, really, for me, when it comes down to it, when the recession first began, and we were going into our struggles, everyone within this community had to take a part of that pie. I mean, the business community took it with higher fees, our citizens took it with higher sales tax, our employees definitely took it with the stoppage of these benefits and of rate increases. And so as we are turning the page and things are getting a little better, we are now being able to, do some great things, noticing that we can now change the food tax and, going forward and listening to the business community, talking to them about changing maybe some of those fee structures, but what's in it for the employees? And so, that's what I'm concerned. I don't want to say we're going to have some mass exodus, but, I'm concerned about things. But quite frankly, even though I do see a concern in police, definitely in police, and then in fire, but really, to me, it's got to be across the board because everybody's put into this. And if we can do something extra for police, then great. I don't know exactly what that is, but that's why I think we need to continue this conversation. And so I agree with you.
We need to be cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're talking, and as we talk this is going to have some impact on cost, our revenue, and our expenditures. So, I mean, and for you to try to keep that figure in your head tonight is a little difficult because you don't have any definite figures that you can discern at this time. So, yeah, if we could, I think that would be very helpful, John.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Just one
Yeah,
real
more?
quick. Just want to add, excuse me, I like the fact, remember on the top, we had talked about, I guess at the last meeting, to try to get rid of the structural deficit. And I really like the fact that that's a proposal. And I agree, I'm kind of concerned also as far as our competitiveness. But I'd also like to see if we can get creative with one-time monies, a way of figuring out some type of pay-per performance.
Like a
Where
bonus?
we no, I don't like the word bonus. I like the word pay-per performance, type of thing in which, you still keep your structural deficit, gone, but you have some money that you can use to try to alleviate some of these issues. So technically, your structural deficit is there. We resolve some of it until we get more money coming in, on an ongoing, but try to get creative with that. Does that kind of make some sense?
Yes, and there are some opportunities
Okay.
because we will be talking later tonight about the rainy day fund and those one-time monies. So.
Great, thank you. Oh, I'm Seth, yes.
If we could also get a copy of some of those studies and surveys they sent out, because I'd really like to see that, because just boiling it down to a PowerPoint doesn't help me. I'd like to know when we're comparing what we are comparing it to.
I'm sure that can easily be done, right, John?
Yes.
Thank you.
Dean? Now we'll turn to Dean Kogenhauer, who will talk about our health benefits. Dean? How's your mother-in-law?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Lord, Madam Lord.
I answered anything, it's okay.
Okay.
That's a kind way to call me lately, so
Okay.
it's fine with me.
Yes, they get a laugh
Here.
every time you open something.
That's right.
You know that.
I know.
This evening, I'm going to talk to you briefly about our healthcare renewal in 2011. Our total budget today is about $4.6 million for healthcare. Of that, employees pay about 14 to 15%. It's trending up, and at this point is just over that 14.5% mark. When we take a look historically as to where we were at the beginning of this renewal process, the carrier came in and requested a 22.5% increase. After multiple discussions between the broker, myself, the carrier, underwriting, and senior underwriting, we were able to get that reduced to a 17.5% increase. We also realized that there are additional things that we need to do as an insurance committee. The insurance committee made up of about 12 members representing each of the major work groups that had to sit down and decide what would be the recommendation to move forward to control long-term cost of health care. A year ago, if we were to look back, our loss ratio was 112%. What that means is for every dollar that we paid in premium, the carrier was paying out $1.12. We absolutely knew we were in a critical situation, One of the carriers that came to the table had requested a 49.5% increase. Obviously, last year, we didn't have a 49.5% increase. As a matter of fact, it was in single digits. We knew we had to do something dramatic last year, and so we did. Some of the things we did is we introduced what's called a consumer-driven high-deductible model, where the employees would actually feel every dollar of every claim up to that deductible amount. Then we put in, we anticipated we'd have about 5% of our employees go into that plan. Then we put in what's called an HMO or a staff model plan. Again, it's designed specifically to control the cost of health care. In an HMO staff model product, it has a gatekeeper to where the employees have to go to the gatekeeper in order to get to the specialist. We specifically designed that to be a little bit more economical for the employees to help drive participation. And the participation in that plan we anticipated would be about 10% of our employees would move. In order to have a rate pass, and that's the direction we really need to head long term, we need to have loss ratios under 70%. What that means is we need to stop using health care at the rate we're using health care today. We did a couple of things early on and continue to do so today. We have a comprehensive wellness initiative that focuses on early detection. What that wellness program has done for us is we have caught breast cancers that employees didn't know they had, testicular cancer they didn't know they had, high blood pressure, diabetes, all of those elements that create major claims down the road we're catching earlier today. But that was only half of what was going to drive our success long term. The other half was plan design. So when we put in that high deductible plan, that $1,200 deductible plan, we did a total of 27 educational sessions, and at the end of the day, 36% of our employees enrolled in that plan. 36% of our employees are in a high deductible plan. How does that compare with our benchmark cities? It doesn't. There's only one other benchmark city that has a consumer-driven high deductible plan, and their participation level is under 5%. So what does that mean to the employee base? That means those employees, when they go to get that prescription, that used to be that $50 copay, if that's a $280 drug, they pay $280. That means if they go to see that specialist that in the past was a $35 copay, and that bill's $230, they pay $230. So the employees have been impacted. It's $1,200 deductible for employee only, and it's a $2,400 deductible for a full family today. Staff model, 34% of our employees went into that plan, and again, this is just 9 months ago. And now the PPO plan is the least popular plan at 30%. But from a historical comparison perspective, we have to look at the PPO because that's the only plan we've had longer than 9 months out of the most popular plans today.
So, Dean, is the $1,200 deductible cheaper premium-wise to the employee? Because I've been really worried that the health costs were going to go up and they're going to impact every employee in this city. And it's going to impact us as the city itself because the premiums are out of sight, all of them. So is the $1,200 a lower premium?
When we look at what's the most economical for the employee, it truly depends on their utilization. In terms of premium alone, yes, it is more economical. And we're looking at adding yet another high deductible consumer-driven plan that would be a $2,400, $4,800 deductible. The reason why employees go into these plans is we're taking the majority of the savings and giving it back to the employee in the form of what's called a health savings account. Our intent is not to have the employees carry the burden of health care. But our intent is to work together through plan design, comprehensive wellness initiatives to lower or flatline the increases as we go forward. Again, to get to that 70% loss ratio number or lower. When we take a look at loss ratios, and that's what's up on the screen before you now, so how has that been working for us so far? The staff model plan is a 38% loss ratio. What that means to us is if every employee we had were in that staff model plan today, we would not be having a discussion of an increase. As a matter of fact, we'd be having a discussion of a decrease. The PPO plan is at 88%, the high deductible employee only at 68%, and high deductible full family 134%. Well, we need to do something about that. And we're going to talk about what that next step is moving forward. When we sat down and met with the CEO and senior executives of Humana Healthcare, which is one of the leaders for consumer-driven plans, they told us up front, you have to put in co-insurance at some point. Employees have to keep some skin in the game after the deductible. And that's one of the things I'll discuss here in a moment of how we're putting that in. 45% of our employees today that are on the plan take full family coverage. So that's an area that we really have to look at in terms of when we do a plan design, we have to remember that half of our employees are in full family. So that's why we focus a little bit on that and on the employee-only coverage. If we look at that PPO plan, and Jeannie alluded to this earlier, we take a look at the increase over the course of the last 37 months. And by 37, I'm including going forward into July of what we propose for next year. The employees' premium's gone up. Sure it has. Everybody's premium's gone up. Okay, but that's only half of the story. We really need to tell the rest of the story. And what that is through the insurance committee making recommendations to city management bringing that forward to council, here's what's happened over that same time frame. Primary care doctor pays over 100% up. Specialist over 100% up. Emergency rooms up. Outpatient went from free, no cost to the employee, to $500, like an MRI. These are real impacts that the employee feels. It's not just the premium. Granted, the premium every employee feels, but with utilization, a family of 4, and this is just by example, it could be higher, it could be lower. You have 8 primary care visits total for the entire family, 4 specialist visits, 1 outpatient, my son falls off the roof, breaks his leg, 2 prescriptions a month. Maybe one's blood pressure and one's high cholesterol. Just 2 for a family of 4. In the course of the last 36 months, their net out of pocket has gone up another $1,000 per year. It also takes a look at there'd be no emergency, no inpatient, no urgent. Yes.
Quick question. So when you're looking at all this, I've been asking questions about health insurance. You know, I asked this a year ago, trying to understand group policies more, always being a self-employed, self-insured type of person. You know, understanding big group plans is, I don't know a lot about. But speaking to other corporations, other small businesses, you know, a majority of them, the employee themselves may not be covered 100% by the premium. Some may be. And then when it comes to dependents, most employers are only, say, giving 30 to 50% premium towards the contribution towards the dependent's insurance premium. Now, if you were to, what I understand, we're doing the opposite. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. What is, for an employee at the city of Goodyear, are we paying 100% of their premium, or was that we're paying up to 17%? Was that what that figure was?
The answer is maybe. It depends on what plan they're on and if they participate in a wellness initiative. If they do not participate in one of the more meaningful wellness initiatives, they pay 10% more of the premium. If they don't have a vested interest in their own health, they pay more for that
Okay.
coverage. They do not receive the discount. If they are on the PPO plan today, they pay employee only, pays 5%. If they are on the HMO or the high deductible plan, that is still today free to the employee. But I would go back to what we're trying to do long
No,
term.
I understand. I'm just trying to figure out between the two
Right.
different types of systems that you see, you'll have people where they pay their employees full premium, and then they have different things like this where it's still coming out of the employee's pocket, in other words.
Yes.
So then to the account of the city of Goodyear, again, the employee's dependent, what is the city contributing towards that premium of the dependent?
Well, I'll put it in the same terms we
Okay,
just spoke of, what the employee is paying. If they're on the PPO plan, which is the most traditional, today, if they do not participate in the wellness initiative, they pay 30%.
Okay.
If they do participate, they pay 20%. And when we compare ourselves, it really depends on who should we compare ourselves to. We could compare ourselves to the private sector. But a lot of the positions that we have, we don't compete with the private sector. So when we take a look at the benchmark cities, for example, they are other municipal governments that we all have similar like positions. And when we do that comparison, we find ourselves no longer in the best position as we may have been in 2003, 2004. But now we find ourselves comfortably parked in the middle on most, and in some cases, like the outpatient deductible, the highest.
I understand. Okay. And I appreciate what you're showing us. But at the end of the day, what we're still saying is that the city of Goodyear, and people are not going to be happy with me saying this, but the city of Goodyear is paying 80 to 70% of the dependent's premium for insurance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So now, I guess the other question is, if you were to look at the other side again, if you were to say if an employee paid more premium, could they possibly get a better insurance plan? And maybe you can easily tell me that. I just don't know. So if rather than the city and the citizens paying for insurance for dependents, would it be that if an employee was paying more for a premium, they were getting a better policy instead of going this other route, where we're paying the premium, the city's paying the premium, but we're doing all these out-of-pocket things to them? Is it a better plan doing it the other way?
I'm not sure I quite understand, but let me take a
I know,
shot
I'm
at
probably
it.
not saying this
Let me
well.
take a shot at it and see if I get
Okay.
it. So, Mayor Lord, Councilmember Osborne, are you suggesting that we have a cafeteria plan where we simply give the employees X amount of money and they can pick and choose what they wish from the cafeteria plan?
What I'm asking is if there's a difference in saying that currently right now, for example, I'll use myself. I believe it's like $280 a month for my whole family for health insurance on the Goodyear plan. Okay, that's just ballpark, but something like that. If I was to be paying $500 a month insurance premium, could I have a better plan instead of doing it this way? If I was paying more myself into it, and at the same time, I might be able to, the city be able to afford a higher salary or hourly wage because we're not paying for the employee's health premium, is there a difference in the package that they can receive? Because at the end of the day, would that employee be able to write off the insurance premium they are paying, but more than likely they're writing off these type of things out of pocket? I'm just trying to see what the differences are.
All right.
Okay? I know it's all connected, and
Mayor
I know
Lord?
that may be something you have to get back to me about.
Councilmember Osborne, the answer is no.
Okay.
The plan is the plan. We are gravitating away from the richer plan, which is a PPO plan. And the reason is because that traditional type of coverage doesn't have the health containment vehicles in it that we need to control the long-term costs of health care. That's why we're moving towards the consumer-driven model, the HMO and staff model plans. So in terms of a richer plan, the answer would be no.
Could I just try something on? I'm having a little trouble understanding this because aren't we really talking about sharing the cost? Who pays what share? So why are you going to get more of a better plan if somebody pays more than the other?
Well, maybe you're not, but then
What you
I
have
guess
to do is pay the insurance company.
I'm a person in the private sector. Nobody is helping me pay for insurance. No one is helping my employees' dependents be paid for their insurance.
No, I understand what
So
you're saying.
I have a harder time with that because I pay my full-time employees 100% of their health insurance. And I believe in that. I would believe in that for the City of Goodyear employees, okay? But I have a hard time saying that citizens of Goodyear should pay 70 and 80% of an employee's dependent. That is what I have a problem with. And so at the end of the day, that's why I ask these different scenarios, and I'm sorry that people will be upset with me for having that feeling, but it's across the nation that this is what people have to deal with. And so that's why I ask, are there different avenues that we've looked at without us saying that the City of Goodyear is paying 80% of employee Joe's daughter? That's what I'm saying.
If I could just make one other suggestion, do we have, this is just from information I have, is that the average corporate in and around Goodyear is paying 70%.
For their dependents?
Yes.
Well, that I would have to see because
I think it's very difficult to. I think it's very difficult to compare it to private industry, to private companies.
But it's also government. It's government, and there's a difference. And so, and no, I'm no Tea Partier, but it's a difference. There's just a difference.
And I think a lot of it has to do overall in the discussion, maybe when you come back with the
benefits.
With the benefits,
I think,
it's all
Joanne,
part
that's
of
it.
Yeah, it's all part of a compensation package. I mean, if you're going to look for a job somewhere, you take a lot of things into consideration, and one of it just happens to be salary. That's just one of it. You know, the others, you're looking at benefits, you're looking at leave, you're looking at sick, you're looking at a variety of things. So, to me, that's a discussion I think that needs to be wound into the entire compensation package.
Because I consider that a benefit.
Oh,
I consider that a benefit going to work for the government.
A Cadillac benefit.
But going to work for a government industry as opposed to a private industry. And that's always the way it's been. Not that we don't have to be very cognizant of what we use our taxpayers' money for and the amount. I think we all need to be, really cautious in how we spend our monies. Yes?
I agree 100% with Joe. I think we need to tie those two in there because there's also tax consequences for the employee if we pay more of that rather than give them salary, which they're taxed on as ordinary income.
Yes.
I also would say I'm under Goodyear's plan now, and although it's a good plan, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. It's not a Cadillac. Several doctors are not on these plans with the government. You have limited choice. And I started with the City of Phoenix with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and that was a Cadillac plan. And I went from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and now we're on Cigna. And several doctors aren't on there. I just have to pay out of pocket if I want to keep the doctors I've gone to forever. So it's a good insurance. And you said Humana. Are we switching again?
There is no plan to switch this year.
I heard Humana. I was just like, okay. So I think we need to look at everything. I agree to see what is best because insurance is something I know a lot of young people, and when they're looking where they're going to work, that's probably one of the top things I think people are looking for, especially now.
When I said it is a Cadillac plan, it had nothing to do with the plan itself. It was the fact that so much of it is being paid by the city. That's Cadillac, and that is a very nice benefit.
Well, let's just take that discussion and take it back to another work session, John.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dean, go ahead.
So I'll I'll just move it forward fairly quickly here. Again, the staff model is at 38% loss ratio. So obviously we want to contain people or keep people into that plan, and there's things we need to do on both the PPO and the high deductible to start to achieve similar benefits as we have in the staff model. So what we've done in the high deductible is we now have suggested to put in 10% coinsurance, on the $1,200, $2,400 high deductible. What that means for a full family, again, 45% of our employees there, their maximum out of pocket now will be $4,400. There is no one else that I'm aware of from a municipality government perspective that is doing what we are doing and on the scale we're doing it on in 2 points. One, the consumer-driven models, the fact that employees are actually going to those plans, and the other is the Comprehensive Wellness Initiative. As a matter of fact, the state of Arizona has been out to visit with us. They currently are in the process of doing a case study of the City of Goodyear's wellness initiatives with a clinic at the focal point of that, which we anticipate will be released within the next 1 to 2 months. The next that we're doing is we are eliminating the PPO Plus plan. There's really no need for it now that the consumer-driven models that have out-of-network options available, it's just not necessary. We're also adding a second consumer-driven model, 2400, 4800, but with no coinsurance. In both of the consumer-driven models, they have what's called a health savings account with monies going back to the employees. In the PPO plan, to assist in cost containment, what we're doing is we're increasing the doctor and specialist copay from the $20.40 to the $35.55. And then in the HMO plan, we're looking at leaving the employee portion the same, but decreasing what the employees would pay for employee and spouse, employee and child, and full family. And the reason is simple. It's all about money. Even if our loss ratios on that staff model plan go from 38 to 70, we would still be looking at a rate pass for next year. And those are the recommendations. The total budget impact, $5.3 million. Again, employees would pay approximately the same, 14.7. So if the city's portion goes up, their portion goes up as well. New city funds needed, $742,000, of which we have found savings in what's called an HSA count to offset that and bring that down to $619.
Thanks, Steve. Paul Louisi will now talk about the Sonoran Valley.
Right, just a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just had an education on risk management.
Right.
I want to commend you for your presentation, sir. Very, very good. Very professional.
Thank you.
As an old insurance man, I'll tell you. I would like to be your mentor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dean.
He's sharp. We're lucky we got him.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Tonight we'll be talking about the Sonoran Valley fire response. June 2009, Maricopa Fire Department, through an IGA, agreed to provide emergency services to the Mobile community at a cost of around $73,000. September 2010, City Council in Maricopa decided to allow the IGA to expire this July of 2011, based on the desire to have their staff back in their city. In same month, our city council was down in Mobile, and we heard from the citizens their displeasure with the emergency services that was being provided down there through Maricopa. April 2011, Maricopa Fire Department officially notified me that they would no longer be stationed in Mobile after July 1st. And as of Thursday, we heard of another local fire department that has interest in possibly providing service down there. So we are just starting the initial process of contacting them. I've alerted the city manager to that effect, and over the next couple weeks we will be continuing those discussions with them.
Is that from the reservation?
Yeah, that's correct, sir. Yeah. And over the last year, just to have you know, over the last year, we've only been running about a call per month on average. Currently, our recommendation at this time for July is if the Goodyear Fire Department does go down to Mobile to provide service, that we would provide a two-person crew, EMS crew only. We would still have to rely on Maricopa through automatic aid to be able to provide us backup in the event of a fire. Again, we average less than one call per month. Typically, those are EMS calls that we are seeing down there. Response unit would be more in line with what we've seen in the Sonoran Valley Master Plan, which is described as a frontier type station, two-person, and a brush truck that would be able to handle mostly EMS calls, but also small brush fire, but nothing too extensive at all. We would not be able to enter into a structure fire at all. We would be able to take control of the fire and EMS related activities in Mobile, be more connected to the community down there, essentially increase the level of service that they currently have there. We'd be much more connected to that community as our culture likes to be with our community, much more connected.
Excuse me, where would you be housed?
At Station 187, 238 in South 99th Avenue, so right across from the school would be our station. And here on the last slide here, you can see the costs, and I'll just run down through those. Personnel costs would be $193,000 for the year. Commodities, $113,000. ITS one-time costs, getting everything back up and running, would be $3,200. For a total cost of $309,000, but then you minus out the $73,000 that we're currently paying out of our budget, for a grand total of $236,355. Again, the one-time cost would be to get us just up and running again. So, open for any questions if you have any at this time.
Would you be hiring new personnel or using existing?
No, we'd be
personnel?
using existing personnel to move down there.
How does that take into consideration if you move existing personnel, you probably lose some coverage on your overtime? Will that increase your overtime budget?
Yes,
Is
that's what mostly the personnel cost would be to backfill that. Currently, our analysis shows that we have a captain off almost every other day. That is one position that we find very critical to fill on a daily basis. They provide supervision, guidance for our members. Right now, we do have a captain that we have as a rover that fills in when those vacancies occur, and it obviously causes no overtime, so we're able to reduce our overtime budget quite extensively. However, if we deploy a captain and a paramedic down to Mobile, then we lose that coverage ability, so we're expecting that we'll have a slight increase in our overtime costs, yes.
Is that in the 309, or would that be in addition to the 309?
No, that's included into that cost.
That's the 193.
That's the 193. That's the personnel cost.
Is it your department's policy that you need a captain and an EMT down there rather than having two EMTs?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yep.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Chris Nadeau on the Regional Wireless Cooperative Radio Project and the timeline. Chris?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. We're going to move through this as rapidly as possible to get us back on track here. Real quick, short history. We started this project really back in fiscal year 07 when we officially joined the Regional Wireless Cooperative. The RWC is 22 agencies across the valley who've decided that it only made common sense to build one big radio system as a bunch of independent radio systems that didn't communicate cross systems. So not only do we have shared infrastructure, shared costs for maintenance, so a little bit of cost savings for us in operating, maintaining, and building the system, but it also builds us a radio system that works much better for public safety and for the citizens we serve. So in fiscal year 08, we started a detailed design process to figure out exactly what it would cost us to build this system. We went forward in fiscal year 10 with actually starting some of the processes to even make that expenditure less by partnering with Buckeye. Once we looked at the overall design of the system as it was at that day and how we would come on, we realized that the town of Buckeye and the city of Goodyear were sort of in the same place. By working together on a joint project, we can add a whole new segment to the radio system that allows us to do it for about half of what it would have cost us to do it for Goodyear by ourselves to do it. So you'll see them start showing up in the timeline because we sort of have a shared fate. Later on that year, we started the whole tower discussion. We realized that we had to build some infrastructure down in Rainbow Valley to service that area today and into the future. We went through a zoning process and decided on what we were going to build down there, finished the detailed design, and came to you folks for acceptance on the contract so we could actually start construction of the system. Through this whole process, we've always known there were going to be two parts to this pie, one being the capital part, which we're now fully funded, the other being the operational costs, which start, once you build it, you got to start paying to operate it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It's currently a nice, simple, short little slide for us. We really have broken out the operations cost into some major areas. The first area that you'll see is deferred is money that's actually paid back into the city of Goodyear, and that's replacement funds. Whenever we buy an item, a radio, a car, whatever it happens to be, a good fiscal practice is you start putting money in the bank to replace that when that thing wears out. We've identified through past practice, engineering design, other things that radio equipment is going to last you between 6 and 8 years. At that time, it's either so beat up you have to replace it, or the technology has moved on to the point where you have to replace it in order to stay current with the technology. So rather than taking a more aggressive 6-year approach, we decided we're going to get every penny for this equipment, so we went with an 8-year model. Problem is with the fiscal challenges we've been facing last year and this year since we bought these new radios, it was a calculated decision to defer those payments back into the City of Goodyear Replacement Fund for these radios, with the knowledge that that means starting next fiscal year, we either have to take those 2 years we didn't make payments, break it out over the remaining 6 years, and add it to the $158,000 and $82,000 to put into that bank, or more as a balloon payment at the 8-year mark, we pay that extra few $100,000 to make those replacements. And the nice thing is we can make those decisions as we go along. We don't have to make those today. We just know those costs are out there. Things we can't defer, much like a cell phone. When you buy your cell phone for a couple $100, you also still have to pay Verizon or whoever your carrier is for that monthly service. Those charges, Verizon has to pay those not only to make a profit, but because they have to pay for all their staff that it takes to support the equipment, for all the infrastructure, the cell towers, all the services you're using and utilizing by having a cell phone. We are now having to do the same thing with our portable radios. As we build this system and migrate on to this larger system, we're getting access to what is already a $140 million radio system, and the number is surprisingly fast. As a matter of fact, it's probably going to be over $200 million in value in this radio system by the time we come online fully in a year and a half. So we're paying what they're called subscriber fees. After lots of debate between all the cities involved, it was determined that the best way to figure out what city pays what amount is we just tallied up all the radios that are going to be on the system, looked at what the real operating costs for the system are, divide those two numbers together and get you a cost per radio, what it works out to. That cost for us is $46 a radio. We pay that, City of Phoenix pays that. Doesn't matter who you are, you pay $46 a radio. We've gone through a process to push down our inventory of radios to the bare minimums so that we're paying that $46 a month only on the radios we need.
Quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
With your Verizon analogy,
Yes, ma'am.
You're saying this is an 8-year model. 2 years from now, or is the manufacturer going to come out with a new improved model and try to get you to sign on to a new plan? Technology is always changing.
Correct.
So.
And actually the manufacturer has already come out with that new model, and they've already let us know that the model we own will no longer be supported a year after we've planned to sunset the radios. And we actually knew that when we bought these radios, because the radios we bought were substantially less expensive than the new ones. So therefore, we went with the cheaper model, and we were going to replace them in 8 years. So it worked out for us. I'm getting the high sign going. So we're looking at $29,000 to keep our radios on the system for the police department, and the fire to be $53,000. Reason for that is fire is going wholly onto the system sooner than the police department. We're waiting until we build our comm center to make the transfer over. The other line item includes radio maintenance and some maintenance we have to pay on the structure at the tower. The RWC pays a lot of the infrastructure support, but it's our capital item, so we pay for that. That in total is the $121,000 and change we're asking for this year. That number will increase next year as we bring more radios onto the system.
So will fire be using our 911 system rather than Phoenix for dispatching?
No, the the Goodyear Fire Department will still be dispatched out of Phoenix Fire. We still answer their 911 calls.
Right.
We will continue to do that transfer down there. It's just that instead of being solely on the older Phoenix radio system, they will be on the newer system, which includes our expansion.
And that's why it costs more for them.
Correct.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I suggest we take a brief recess. We have the kids, the school children here
Yes.
for the recycling presentation, so if we could do that presentation next.
Are you talking to do that before or
Yes.
now to do
Now.
that one? Okay.
So-
All right. Do I need to adjourn this
Just
then?
recess this for a few minutes.
Okay, I'm going to recess this meeting for a few minutes for a presentation. No, not yet. I think they're out that way. Joe, this is the West one. Yeah. Meeting to order. So we'll start this, please. John, you have it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Terry Canada will briefly go through the capital improvement program plan part of the presentation. Terry?
With that, I'm just going to go recap what we had talked about last week and then go into a little more detail in the out years of 5-year plan, some of the operating costs, and then a list of the unfunded projects. So for fiscal year 12, again, just to remind you, the capital program is about $6 million. Majority of that is streets and facility projects. 5-year summary, total plan is $36 million, substantially less than it has been in the past. We are working on the carryover projects, and right now we're estimating to carry over nearly $30 million from this year's plan. So you'll see that number jump up. Again, the $6 million plus we'll have the carryover from this year. Some of the key projects that are in the 5-year plan, again, we looked at 12 last year. I want to draw your attention to 13, 16. The first one on the right-hand side there is business solutions replacement. That's essentially looking for a new computer system, if you will. I believe this is a study to do that. MC 85 reimbursement is one in a series of payments. And then Yuma Rome improvements, Van Buren Streets, and a number of water lines, miscellaneous water lines. So again, these are just some of the key projects within the 5-year plan.
Is that the county project, that MC 85?
Yes, it is.
reimbursement? Is that,
It's what we owe on the project.
we owe them the money?
Yeah, we delayed that.
Do we get any bonus if we, or any lower amount if we paid that off early?
I have no idea. They're actually giving it to us interest-free, so.
Again,
I
the,
heard you say that.
starting with year 12, the 122 you see there has been in the operating forecast all along. It's for the radio system that Chris talked about earlier tonight. Again, we've broken out the estimated operating costs by project type and funding source. Over the 5-year plan, we're estimating about $800,000. This is just a brief list of some of the major key unfunded projects that are in the plan. With these, some of the projects also require operating costs, and therefore that's why they're not funded, because we don't have operating funds currently to run additional parks or pools or fire stations or things like that. So with that, Loma Linda Park, we are doing the design on that, I think in the upcoming 12, but not the construction. city center, police, fire training, administration facility, fire administration facility, public works operations facility, Bullard Wash, EMR Park, and pedestrian pathways. And you can see most of the cost of these projects alone are pretty substantial just within themselves.
Is the Loma Linda for the pool?
It is for the, they're going to do a design of the upgrade of a pool.
Oh, no, the Loma Linda is for the joint planning agreement with
It's for the
John
church.
Vianney.
Oh, that one.
Yes.
There is a pool on the property.
There's a pool on the property, but we aren't touching the pool.
Well, I'm sorry, I guess the upgrade would be the side amenities, things like
Yes.
that. Okay.
Is there any grant opportunities on that Loma Linda?
We're seeking them out aggressively.
Okay. Yeah, I really like the fact that when that was brought up, we had about 7,500 people in the audience, participating, and this is one project, with the neighborhood involvement. I really wish we could find some money for it.
Well, and the reason that we did find some small money in the city's fund for the 2012 budget to get the design going was because John Vianney came forward with a substantial match. So we looked for our money to match that, so at least we can do the design while they are out searching for funds.
More money.
Yeah. And as far as the earlier discussion about the lease of these facilities, you'll see here, I mean, this is unfunded projects for the next 5 years, and in the unfunded projects is the city center. I mean, so obviously things can change because budgets are fluid, but that's our thoughts right now.
Yeah, and I suspect you're not too far off with the looking at the property valuations. I don't see how it's going to come back in that kind of
And with that, I'll answer any questions on the capital projects.
Thank you, Karen. What I want to talk about briefly is one-time uses and additional considerations. These one-time uses are all in the budget. They're funded with current revenues. Economic development projects, which are permits and infrastructure, $250,000. That's for current projects that the city is a finalist on right now. Projects that we expect based on the letters we have out. $500,000 for economic development job credits and training. That's for economic development job credits and training that we've agreed to, such as Sub-Zero. That's $282,500 is the estimate. The balance will be going to other projects that the city is still working on. The agreements will be going to the council as they're finalized. Risk management claims, a reserve of $250,000 for funding for future claims. Risk management consultant, $30,000 is funding for about 30 hours per week to work on the city's safety program, ensuring a safe workplace. Our workers' comp claims have been inching up since we've been cutting back on our training, and so we want to readdress some of those priorities. Part-time labor is primarily for a part-time legal assistant to keep up with the ongoing workload in the city attorney's office. City council initiatives, this is a fund that we're putting in the budget, is for funding for projects or initiatives that are proposed by the council. City council is scheduled for a goal-setting retreat workshop in June following the municipal election, and new goals and that will be established, so that could go towards some of those. The enhanced street maintenance, $1.2 million. The street maintenance funding total for fiscal year 12, we have $400,000 carryover, so it will be $1.6 million that we have for streets. As you'll know, we had pointed out in the previous work session that we need $2.5 million per year to keep up, but this is the best we could do right now. For 1.6 isn't that bad. We think that we're putting together a program now that will address the highest priority streets, and we'll come back to you with those recommendations in the near future. Fleet reserve funding is $1.3 million. We have an estimated carryover of $500,000, so that's $1.8 million. And then we have about $200,000 to $250,000 from the sale of the fleet that we've sold this past year. So we have roughly $2 million in the, going into the fleet reserve. So we'll build up the reserve a little bit with this budget item. We'll probably buy again in the neighborhood of $1 million. We haven't got the list ready for you yet to come to you with, but we're working on that. So we are going to be able to build up the reserve by about $1 million. And as I mentioned, all of this comes to that I forget the 1.175 or something number earlier. These are all from current revenues within the operating budget, so they're all recommended for approval at this time.
I'm sorry, John, real quick. So these are all general fund?
Yes.
Not construction sales tax or anything like that?
No.
And they're one time. Okay, thank you.
And then fiscal year 12 additional considerations. We talked about our right-of-way landscaping, and we put together some numbers. I think we shared them with you that they would cost by, I think it was $4.9 million of needs. That's for granite, it's for landscaping, it's for tree replacement and stuff like that. We did a phase 1, which was $785,859. That is not funded, so that's one item that we need to still look at. We are fully funding the maintenance, or no, we aren't. Fully funding the maintenance program is also a need that, to the $2.5 million for streets that we still need to get up to. And then compensation and benefits, the health insurance, we need to talk about some more, and I think a separate work session on compensation and health benefits would be helpful. Right now, what's in the budget is employees will increase 14%, and the city portion will increase 86%. And then the Arizona State Retirement Contribution, the cost shift to the employees, and no merit increases are included in the budget at this time, and no market increases are included in the budget. If there aren't any questions on that, or are there any questions?
Just real quick, did you say that we needed an additional $2.5 million for maintenance, or?
For street maintenance, that was the long-range plan that we went over with you a month or two ago.
And how much are we putting in this year? Are we getting close to that, or?
We're getting close. It's 1.6.
Okay, so we're about 900,000 short?
So, I'm sorry, John. Coming up, though, you're going to be talking about policy regarding the rainy day fund, and, okay, I'll just wait.
And first, what we want to do is have Mike Svetch come up and talk briefly about that right-of-way maintenance that we talked about. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor and John. Yes, just very quickly, as Mr. Fischbach had said, back in November when we did a work session with City Council, you had requested us to do a little bit of, research and development, cost estimating based on replacing some of the decomposed granite that has washed and or just been cleaned up as part of typical maintenance, as well as plant replacement. And as a result, we did that assessment back in November and December. We came back with an overall cost of $4.3 million, and we have phased that in over 5 years. Just very quickly, here is phase 1. We did try to touch on the highest priority areas, the areas that are in greatest need as of today. And as you can see, we have that spread out throughout the city. We have hit northern parts of the city, central parts of the city, as well as southern parts of the city. It is the breakout of that cost, $785,000. $731,000 of it is actual DG, decomposed granite, and that is approximately 2.2 million square feet of DG. 54,000 of it is the plants, and that's actually about 2,000 to 2,500 plants that we would get for that money. Any questions?
Yeah.
That's about 30 cents a square foot on the DG.
Rocks. That's pretty expensive rock.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, council policy items. Here's the rainy day fund. Right now, it's 4 months operating, and it's one-time funds. It's sitting there, $16.34 million. I want to review first a comparison to other cities. There's no impact to the bond rating with the sound plan of reduction if we reduce it. And fund maintenance reserves, review those with you. The rainy day fund consists of three different elements. The current practice is for 4 months of ongoing operating expenditures, so 33.33% of our operating budget. We think that it's safe to go down to roughly 25% of the operating budget. And we've talked with the bond houses and the bond markets, and they think that makes a lot of sense also, as long as we do it on a structured, planned basis. The three elements that comprise the fund, cash basis fund, that's $3 million basically. That's a restricted fund. We cannot touch that. We have to replace it immediately if we do touch it. Revenue stabilization account, $3,073,529 is sitting there, and the additional, quote, rainy day fund of $10,277,182. And that can be touched also. So basically we can touch $13.3 million of those funds. The Valley, I hope you can read that. The Valley has these various funds and the amounts in it and the percentages. You'll notice that Avondale is the only city that has a larger rainy day fund than we do. Avondale has $46.2 million in the operating budget, and they have a rainy day fund of $19.5 million, which is 42% of their operating budget. And then you'll see us halfway down. We're at $51.5 million with a $16.3 million rainy day fund, or 32% of that, and that's the second highest. You'll see some cities like Glendale are down to 3%, which I would never recommend going down that low.
How with all the debt service?
And Phoenix is at 3%.
I can't believe they're that low.
You know, but, well, yeah, no comment. But, you know, they can do it. I mean, you know, they're going on their cash flow and things like that. What we're recommending is that, you know, somewhere at 25%, 20% to 25% on up, somewhere around there is a safer figure, or it's a safe figure. The bond houses agree with us. And so what we have basically is that the council has a choice. I mean, there are projects that you can apply this to. Here's one or two examples. The right-of-way landscape, which we just talked about, phase 1, which is unfunded, that would cost $785,000. Compensation and benefits, do you want to do a different mix of the health insurance, employee increase, or city portion? No merit increase, no market increase. This would be these are one-time dollars now, but
the compensation and benefits are ongoing. They're not one-time.
they're ongoing unless you do something like Joe suggested.
Like the compensation.
With a performance compensation, yeah.
Okay.
So, and then there's other things, I'm sorry, my mind's a blank. Other people had suggested other things tonight that we could also look at here.
I think I did. I suggest economic development infrastructure for the
Bullard Avenue, yeah.
gateway.
And that would be a very good use of rainy day funds, for example, of putting some of them, and we'll develop a cost estimate for you. It'll be pretty substantial, I think, to do infrastructure along Bullard Avenue so that you can attract and incent businesses to go there the way you want to plan it. Because if we don't do something there under Prop 207 and other Arizona laws, we're going to end up with, I don't mean to denigrate Tolleson, but we're going to end up with Tolleson-like development.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be large, big box distribution centers, not what we had in mind as the Bullard corridor. And the state law doesn't allow us to do that. What we need to do is sit down with the property owners, and I sent you a brief thing today that gave us some examples of how we could do it. We did meet with the property owners in 2007, I think it was, and 2008. They were kind of interested. Now, they aren't interested in paying for it, but they're interested in doing something. So there's some ways that we could work it out, I think. And so what we need to do is develop some basic cost estimates on what this would cost. So we could, for example, not to this scale, but we could do improvements like up at the mall. I mean, that costs $47 million, but we could do improvements, put streets in, curbs and gutter lights, and all of that. The mall is now ready for development, so they will come forward and be able to build on it. So we could do that on some of the Bullard Avenue right of way, and perhaps incent some businesses to look at that. So those are some of the areas that we have that we can take a look at.
John, didn't we do some type of deal on, what is it, Van Buren, where we put a lot of infrastructure in place and there's a payback agreement, and I guess as it gets developed, the owners of the land, come forward? Is that ran for what, 10, 15, 20 years? I forget.
I don't know how long it ran, Joe, but I know that there's the corner property that the gas station that came up owes us $485,000.
I think Rory's got a.
I think Rory
Madam
has
Mayor,
it.
it's a 15-year agreement. Start cost
Okay.
recovery ordinance. You upfront the infrastructure cost and assess on a linear square foot basis the adjacent property parcels. So
Would that
once they-
work? Would that work on something like the Bullard, or?
You need a copy of this?
No.
Yeah, so I don't see why it wouldn't.
You could. I mean, you're upfronting the infrastructure. Once they come in and start development, then they're responsible for repaying. That is an option.
That would make most sense probably for Bullard Avenue itself.
I'm just throwing that out because I know we had some mechanism in play where we put that money up front, and we're hoping to get it back as they start developing
Yeah,
on.
you have a 15-year window per our ordinance, and
Okay.
it's interest-free for the owner. So,
Right.
they're getting the benefit up front, and we're carrying the cost until such time as they choose to develop. So that's the concept of the cost recovery plan.
That's basically what Chandler did.
15 years with you.
So.
It didn't.
15 years, it's off the books.
Yeah. Didn't we also, I guess, for right of way? Didn't they dedicate right of way, and that went towards part of their cost or whatever as well?
It could. I think here in this building, I think they did. We gave them credit for right-of-way dedication. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just throwing it out because I know there's some other issues that possibly of putting that in. Again, I don't know what kind of money we're talking about, but I thought we had some type of ordinances, on the books which could or could not be looked at for that.
I have a couple questions. Back in the unfunded or the funded items, you have the fleet replacement, 1.3 million.
Yes.
Could you not consider that as one-time funds? That's 1.3 million. Okay, so if the money from the rainy day fund or whichever was to pay that leaves 1.3 million available in the general fund. What kind of figures are we talking about for a merit increase for a market? Back to that question again. What kind of money is that?
The numbers that we're looking at for a merit increase basically are $400,000 for 1%.
Okay.
And so I think it's $400,000. Carrie? Okay. So $400,000 for 1%. So you can calculate there what you can do.
So but that could be a consideration.
Yes,
Now,
it could.
but what does that do, I guess, for the next years after that to keep that merit increase?
It's pure speculation, but hopefully our revenues will continue to go up, and hopefully the mall will come in. And as you saw in the graph that we showed you earlier, in 2 to 3 years, we have a wider gap of revenues over expenditures, but it would all be a gamble. So going out that far with ongoing expenses would be a gamble.
That's
It's only 400,000.
well, that's why I had mentioned a potential of using one-time money, still pay performance, but a one-time check, which comes out of a pot of money that's not part of the base, but part of a. So that way, it's not reoccurring. And again, it's thinking outside the box. It's a way of doing some type of merit, but it's not something that's ongoing. In fact, you could even possibly do it in a way that once meeting all of their goals and objectives, it's not split out into checks. It's a one check. So it means a little more than if you're getting a little bit, you know what I mean, each week. So there's a lot of different ways you can kind of look at that. But My only concern is if you add it to the base, then your balanced budget, your structural deficit now goes away because now that's an ongoing expense, so.
Exactly.
You do have to consider, Joe, that, obviously taxes,
Right.
we're required to withhold taxes. So
Right.
if you give a $500, that means we're probably going to do a check for $300.
Right, and again, 1,000 would be, you got 500 employees, 1,000 would be 500,000, 1,500 would be 750. You could do the math there, but again, it doesn't mess up the fact you have a structural deficit gone. So there's a lot of different ways you can look at that.
And we can work on some numbers and some options for you to take a look at.
But still, the advantage of being able to use some of that rainy day funds could take place, opening up some general fund money then.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
I think we have a lot of work to do between now and the follow-up session.
I think so.
Especially with benefits, especially with health benefits, compensation, looking at the swapping ongoing monies for one-time expenses, looking at what numbers specifically we want to give an option to bring the rainy day fund down to. I mean, so I would think in terms of like, if we brought it down to 14 million, that's no problem. 13 million, we may want to have to argue about a little bit, but 13 to 14 million dollars, bring it down to that level this next year, and see what we can do with that. Look at the Bullard Avenue improvements between Van Buren and Yuma, and take a look at what type of improvements would be there. One of the suggestions that we're going to, I think, Rourke, is that, the property owners, one way to incent them is the property owners wouldn't have to repay the city if they didn't put in distribution centers, because distribution centers are permitted uses for that property. So we'll try to wrap all of that together for you.
All right. Yes.
When you come back, I'm sorry, when you come back with some of the numbers, like kind of what Joanne was saying, could we see what it was? Because my concern was you had police and fire way down there. They weren't even near the 100%. Can we get like amounts? Like it's going to cost this much to bring this group up to 100% or this amount? Because I guess I need to see numbers.
I agree. It would be very helpful.
Yeah, we will do that too.
Anything else?
No, not for this. Just the calendar, reminding you here's where we're headed. For the 425 work session, we'll have additional follow-up to what I've just said. And then the 5-6 work session will be a additional follow-up that 516 additional follow-up. And then the tentative budget hopefully will be ready for adoption by 5/23.
So we're finished with this meeting?
Yes, we are.
I'm going to adjourn this meeting, and then we're going to go into special meeting. Meeting adjourned?